the American system, which says, by the time you go to university, government will not pay for you. Maybe they pay up to an amount if you're in a public institution, you'd fund yourself. It's because in that world, that case, wherever else they want to go work and actually earn a wage. It's not the same situation in Kenya. So the current modeling that we have of funding education, it's very inconsistent. If you actually go to what we've been quoting under the Bill of Rights, the right to actually have education in itself, that is not a constitutional problem. The Constitution has actually given a framework of how we should be able to, what principles should guide how we should have education. And again, then you have these policy statements that go into detail of what should be done and all that. So I think every specific regime that has actually come in has always tried to cure education, because there's always these thirst of having something new. Kenyatta came in and told us the CBC was the way to go because it was funded by somebody else. And fundamentally, on my end, I believe the fund model is actually sort of copying after the United States American approach of way of funding education at that highest level. And that's how we actually have the problem. That's how I feel, because we are addressing class issues with education. The real question here should be, should education be free for all, yes or no? If that question is answered, and I think that is what Kibaki was trying to kill with Professor Nyang'o. No one cared if you're a billionaire son, but as long as you went to a public institution, a public school, you actually were paid, that money was paid for. Whether you're from a rich family or a poor family, you actually get money to actually pay for you. And on my end as a person, I believe that's the way to go. If you have billionaire son and they've gone to a public institution, let government, by all means, go and pay. Let us build this cake and pay for everyone. If you go to places like Finland, there's nothing like private schooling. If you're a minister's president's son, all of you go to public school. So I think this issue about education, we might want to be treating a few things, but there's a bit of class wars in there. The rich should pay for their own education so that government can do what it's supposed to do. So for me, Eli, I think every regime can come with what it wants to come with, but the real test is when this thing is actually challenged in court, because people who've put this to court are trying to urge the courts to expedite the process so that it's actually hard. When it's hard, the problem is the government you have, and not just the Ruto government, the governments that have existed since independence, have they been respecting court orders? The answer probably, you guys, is a no. So the biggest test here should be, if judged in court and found to be unconstitutional by how it was drafted, implementation, and all that, then by all means should throw it out the window and actually come up with something else. So I think for me, Eli, when it comes to the funding model, some people are trying to solve problems later. The rich will always pay for their own school fees, and by that you bring in a whole lot of issues. So for me, I believe, like Neta was saying here, not to challenge his point, yes, you can build economies and say, and societies and say that the least privilege should actually be looked at, which is actually a good thing, but it's not the only measure. The problem we have in Kenya is actually a money problem and corruption. The moment we sort out that right now, no one would say that let's reduce the number of governors if you can actually get to pay for them and they're actually working and doing their role as they're supposed to. So at the end of the day, even with the chance you're having about collecting signatures, let us fix this and that, we are always fixing issues. Even as we're building constitutions, I think the Constitution 2010, it was from the guilt of what the Moi regime had infected us with. So we had to go ahead and build something else to actually not find ourselves there. Yes, it's progressive. Those are our own experiences. But I think Kenya has come of age to a point whereby if you're building policy, we are making moves. We can actually make moves objectively. We don't necessarily try to run and try to fix like this one particular issue because of the experiential problems and issues, but rather looking at the bigger picture. So I think for me, my final point on this, Eli, would be, and I've broken away from education, the issue is, okay, let's reduce governance, let's do this, let's merge this. At the heart of it, the issue is corruption, mismanagement of funds and all that. If you're able to do all these things together and still function well, no one would actually have an issue. If all these MCAs represented as well and did their role, even with the highest numbers, perhaps even in those small subdivisions, that is how we've decided to lead ourselves. Yes, the Kenyan people have the mandate to go ahead and change that. and decide, let's change, cause and all that. But one thing would be, politicians would always draft the ideas, they would run with them, they would go back to their tribal cocoons and try to, whip people's emotions to look at that direction. I think when it comes to the constitution, for heaven's sake, let's calm down our waters. The problem here, Neto, to me, is not an article. It's actually the whole spirit of how people view the constitution and its implementation. If we can actually fix and implement this constitution, we are good to go. Americans have done it for the longest time. Yes, they're amending a few things. That's part of the process, I agree. But I think the Kenyan elite, especially politicians, the constitution is actually a document they only look at when it favors them. If there's something that is not favoring opposition, let's go change this because we want IBC to do this. When will we ever sit down and from a nationalist point of view, just say, this is our constitution, this is what it stands for, let's implement it. And if you have to fight again to go to the streets, whatever avenues you use, civic education, how do we implement Constitution 2010? Okay, Eli, I leave it there and yield the mic.
Thank you very much, Richard. You're talking about how we implement it, and you're saying it's not about all those articles, it's about us respecting and understanding the spirit of the Constitution. Anthony, still on the same issue, before we go back to our guest speaker and really elaborate from his point of view, do you think education in our country has been shaped within the parameters of the kind of country we want as a people? And if not, what are the gaps? Why should we be investing in computers and laptops, quote unquote, projects, and there are young people who are studying under trees in 2024? Anthony. Anthony, can you hear me? I think Anthony is not able to come on the mic. Obets, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. So as we get that figured out, let me get to your messages here. I see a question by analyst Stella who says, talking of socioeconomic rights, in what ways does the Constitution strengthen democracy? Recently, the judicial system has been offering lawmakers an opportunity to correct their defiance of the Constitution, for example, with the issue of housing levy. What's the disconnect? Questions, okay? Abdurrahman says, for personal reasons, obviously, having listened to RFK's junior speech when he was suspending his presidential campaign in support of Trump, freedom of speech, media censorship, illegal spying of citizens, struggle with chronic illnesses are issues even superpowers are grappling with. Therefore, we cannot say that it is only a Kenyan issue that we have all these problems happening. So NATO, back to the same questions, and I'll allow you to respond to some of the issues raised by our listeners. Thank you. NATO.
Now, just to the last point, with regards to what superpowers are struggling with, that's where I started. That the test of how countries deliver on their health, education, development is tested on something called to the best means of the available resources. So it is true that the sort of healthcare that Kenya can provide to its citizens is not the same as Finland can do. It's not the same as UK can do. No, it's not the test that. My test is not to go and say I want the kind of treatment that they get in the US, or I want the kind of test of treatment that they get in Finland. We said the test is based on the most vulnerable of us in society. Can the woman in Todonyang or the Molo woman get medication when she's suffering from cholera? Is it possible that a woman who is in the middle of some village in Meru or in Isiolo can give birth appropriately? At least find shelter, find something that looks like a hospital to give birth and deliver. That is the test. So we're not asking her to have ultrasound or to have a proper shower after giving birth. No, we're just saying to the best means of our available resources. It simply means that there should be a semblance of healthcare. They should not be dying, struggling to find an anti-rabies, for example. For a dog has bitten you in the village, that now you're dying because you've been bitten by a dog, or that kind of basic standards. So the test is not universal. The test is to the most of the available resources. And we've said a country like Kenya has no business complaining that it cannot give all of us basic health care, at least paracetamol for my backache or for my cough, when the two presidents have actually said that they lose 2,000 shillings a day to corruption. And this 2,000 shillings a day to corruption is for buying villas or taking their boyfriends or girlfriends to Dubai to swim with dolphins. So it's not fair. It is not fair that we steal money from the republic and then come and say, as the presidency or as cabinet secretary, look, I mean, one of the things that was really, really saddening is that those of you who watch the vetting of cabinet secretaries, the ones who are serving the second term, you see some of them 2 years ago had a net worth of 200 million. When they came back, they had a net worth of 400 million. I mean, they don't run factories. They don't have mineral rights, they don't have royalties. So if they do not manufacture, and where did they make this kind of money in a short while? Why don't they take all of us Kenyans to go there and make that kind of money? Because all of us are looking for money. So the test is not that we're asking for quality like they are asking in the US, but we're asking for the basic minimum, which is constitutional, which is the minimum core content. But let me start from where we began. That particular one was breaking. That's why I started with it. Now, someone talked about the Jubilee government and the laptops. I'll tell you, as a politician, that every government has this where they want to steal. So in the Jubilee government, the laptops was the scandal. You know, if you remember in Mwai Kibaki's government, they stole on safety belts and the Anglo leasing. So every government has always something where they want to steal. So the politician, you must always ask, is this for the benefit of the Kenyan people, or this is where the theft is? So having told you that, you must make sure that in every successive government, you must see where is the theft. So laptops was a theft for that particular administration, because you see, you cannot talk about having laptops when there's no electricity. You cannot talk about laptops when there is no shelter. And someone has said very well, West Pokot, they're not so sure if they're fighting with bandits or if the school is closed, or like you've seen some schools were built and they don't exist, and they continue getting money. You've just seen where there's only a gate and the rest of it is farmland. So that is a test. So don't really take seriously the laptop promise of the Jubilee government. It was not meant to be, and you can always evaluate that with every successive government and see where they want to steal. Now, we are saying that checks and balances are good, and someone said it. So checks and balances, the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive are supposed to check each other. That is actually when the constitution works and works properly. But you've seen in Kenya right now that we have at least one arm of government that is going rogue. You have to figure out for yourself which one is going rogue, and that is expected in a constitutional. When you are living in a constitutional autocracy, you expect that one arm of the government, of course, is definitely going to run rogue. Ordinarily, in a good moment, and you saw it when CJ Maraga was in office, I think it was a bold decision when he nullified the presidential election. Whether he was justified or not, at least that was a good statement from the judiciary that, look, we are an independent arm of government and we shall check you when the executive, when you think you're wrong, we'll check you. They also did a couple of times check on the House of Parliament. So that was good. And you remember it's Maraga again who said, let's dissolve Parliament, because Parliament had gone rogue and Parliament had not been able to make law that was giving effect to the Truth Agenda rule. So that is what a constitutional democracy needs to be, that the three arms of government need to be independent yet interdependent. The independence makes sure that not one arm of the government goes rogue, and if it goes rogue, then all of us suffer. Like right now, the judiciary is sleeping on the job, the legislature slept on the job, and it's part of the fault. Like I spoke to on Sunday, that one of the things we need to do is, if Kenya is going to stick with this sort of constitutional structure, then we must truncate our elections, the presidential election or not. LD, is that your hand up again?
Just finish on that submission, then I'll go to the next one.
Okay, fine. So I really think that we need to consider a truncated election so that you have a House of Parliament that can check the executive, not because they were voted in together. When you voted it as 6-piece, it becomes very difficult. But something I want to speak to, before I give you the mic, is the education model. And the education model in Kenya needs to speak to our socioeconomic circumstances. And I think that's where we have failed quite a bit. That why, if you see some of these courses that people are studying at the university, where are they going to get jobs? Kenya, that is 70% agricultural, needs to be training people, human resource, that responds to socioeconomic issues. Kenya, where people are doing chamas and women medical rounds, should be training people on operative issues. So when you start training as in places where the graduate is graduating but knows for a fact there's not going to be a job, I really think that's where we get it wrong. So moving forward, and I hope when some people get into government, we will be looking at the the education models that will speak to the skill sets that we churn out. Need to be skill sets that are relevant to the Kenyan market to employ jobs. That is the reason why, our agriculture is failing. If Kenya is going to be 70% agricultural, we need to be having more livestock related, for pastoralist communities, for the pyrethrum, for the millet, so that we have training that is relevant to our job market. Otherwise, now we're training human resource for what end? But I really think that we will hopefully get there. And thanks, Eli. I yield to your questions now.
All right. Hopefully we get there. I know there are you might be wanting to contribute and you feel like you are scared to be part of the microphone. So just send in your questions. We'll read them out to our speakers. Now, Nato, when you talk about equity, I'm still in that aspect of achieving a lot of what our constitution is looking at. And I'm going to refer you to something. Just a second, I pull it up because the other day we had Kenya having a celebration. We have finally, for the first time in our history, got an attorney general that is a female. And we talk about affirmative action and involvement of young people and women in all these holding positions. When we celebrate as a country in 2024 that finally we have a lady attorney general, does that translate to us achieving this constitution, or is it simply calling us to order and saying that is not worth celebrating? Because remember when we had Baba na Mama, that is, and Martha, running for presidency, the only reasons that the political speakers and political brokers were talking about that was a winning ticket was the fact that Martha Karua was going as a running mate. We also, I believe, Justina was also one of the running mates in this the previous election. And looking at it from that perspective, anytime there is a substantial political gain within our counterparts, and I'm talking about women in our society, we look at it as this constitution finally coming to life. But one wonders, what is the competitive nature of this? Because one of the reasons why the Constitution 2010 and devolution became an issue in 2013, it's because many felt there was underrepresentation. Today, as we speak, we talk about overrepresentation. We cannot even defend effectively the role of women reps, MCAs, and what have you. So NATO, advancing the talk of this constitution and minds that we've traveled, what is the place of our women in ensuring that this constitution comes to life? We want to work with it.
Okay, so Pretty interesting questions there. When you asked me to introduce myself and why I call myself a Green Kenyan living his profile and courage, I did tell you that I co-lead a political party called the United Green Movement Party. And I told you that there we believe in equality. So, it's a no-brainer if you're a member of the United Green Movement Party that, the chair is shared, is co-shared. So you have two co-chairs, you have two, and two generals right now speaking on this constitutional law issues on the UGM platform. So for us as a political party, we believe in equality, not just for purposes that it's fashionable. You know for a fact that women deliver when they've been given a
Pardon me.
Sorry, and I thought that at some point there was an indication that might happen, and my apologies for the space dropping. However, we'll try and finish what we had started. And one person has really made me laugh when he said, "You cannot drop the space when someone from Alliance is talking. It is bad manners." But but Neto, it is not intentional. We regret that, and we'd like to allow you to continue with your presentation. I think, Mizani, you had already asked a question which I was trying to address. Neto, if you can progress with that, maybe, and we sincerely apologize. We hope.
Thank you very much. And the other thing that you said I didn't hear, but that's fine. So
I was told just for comic effect that a space cannot drop when a man from Alliance is speaking, and the person speaking is a former constituent of yours, so you can understand why.
Okay, but I mean, I do understand that the space can sometimes drop, so I have no problem, absolutely. But like I was telling you that equality, like the Constitution of Kenya anticipates, is a good thing that we should struggle for. You know, there are women, persons with disability, and minorities who are disadvantaged, in just because of the social economic circumstances, and also because of social cultural predisposition. So equality is something that we really need to advocate for as a people, and we've seen right now, apart from my friend Martha Koome, who is not of women governors until they go rogue. I think some of them are doing very well. So Dorcas Ador, I mean, of course, someone I know at a personal level, and I think she has struggled. If you look at her history, she will have been director of public prosecution many years ago. I mean, in terms of content, in terms of knowledge, in terms of ability, but she has been discriminated upon. She has been disadvantaged, and that's what equality. And that's why the Constitution of Kenya is very, very good, because the Constitution of Kenya says you can't have a net that is not more than 2/3 gender. So therein, if at all it wasn't a constitutional provision, then you can be sure that Dorcas would have been bypassed, or the president would have found it fit to have women as part of this cabinet, because as a matter of fact, most often women were then disadvantaged. If you look at the previous governments before Constitution 2010, very few women found themselves into cabinet. But right now, you see women are really, really doing a good job in terms of this particular space. And I told you, for us in the United Agreement Party, who believe in equality, and if you come to the UGM party, it's a no-brainer that women will have equal number of spaces with the men. But now, something that most Kenyans do not understand, which is a really unfair thing, is that most Kenyans have always compared the position of women reps to that of members of parliament. I think it is not fair. So number one, I'll break it down. The position of women reps in the country is an affirmative action position. It is simply to give the women a chance to themselves for proper elective office. And the county from where I come from, which is Homa Bay, you see my women rep for 2 terms is now governor. That is the advantage. That is the advantage of being in affirmative action position. So it is not that you expect them to perform more than members, single member constituencies. But you see, it's just not fair to use women rep position as a yardstick. Look, a single constituency member of parliament right now has about 200 million shillings in terms of CDF. The women rep has barely 20 million per constituency. So, for example, if you're in Bungoma, and I see my colleague from Halaba Ward, you discovered that the women rep in Bungoma is going to have about 8 constituencies to deal with 160 million, whereas a single constituency in Bungoma has already 200 million. You can't compare in terms of what they can do in terms of delivering for results. So we must understand the women rep position as an affirmative action position that prepares women for office in a way that they would not have done. So most people always say that you want to scrap the position of women. No, scrap first the ones for men, because most men using the same yardstick for women are performing very badly. They're doing very badly. So it cannot be that you use one single woman's failure and then push it all across the other women across the country. I think that's not a very talent. So let us say that yes, some women do badly, some fail in office. But the same way they fail in office, the same way some other men also fail in office. So So the argument that the women reps are not doing anything else, the women reps are actually doing something because they're now becoming role models of other young girls. They are getting into spaces where men would not go, in terms of getting back young girls who delivered back to school, getting young girls to have sanitary towels. Some of those roles men will not be able to do. And that is what affirmative action is about. Affirmative action is about making sure that all of us are advantaged in a way that makes sense. So I really think that let's celebrate the Constitution 2010. It's giving us very many advantages. It's making sure that equality and Article 27 is being realized. The only thing we've not done very well with, and I really hope we can, is the space of minorities and also the space of persons with disability. So if to the extent that I will be seeing it 5% of elective and appointed positions of persons with disability being represented, and then I really think that we'll have already reached the aspirations of Article 27 of the Constitution of Kenya. Thank you.
So, Neto, if I ask you, and I know this is always a very slippery path to take, especially when it becomes about men and women conversation, and I don't want us to go to that direction. However, hear me out. You speaking about preparing women for roles such as governors, and the question therefore begs is, what exactly did the constitution that we have anticipate when we were creating these roles? Was it just to ensure they are part and parcel of the conveyor belt that delivers the constitution, or the specific role they play in ensuring that Kenya can achieve her ambitious path of, making everyone happy? I don't know, Neto, what exactly do you interpret was the purpose of the constitution of having these roles, rather than just saying they are preparing them as role models and for those positions? Neto.
So the question that you ask is a deep equality conversation. Let's take it away from the women. Let's take you to South Africa and the black minorities. You see, when South Africa became independent, many South African blacks had not gone to school. So it simply meant that, for example, because they'd not gone to school for many years because of apartheid, it therefore behoved the country, when it became independent, that some blacks needed to work. So that is a space of affirmative action. The affirmative action anticipates that there's a certain group, social cadre or gender or tribe or race that has been disadvantaged for some time. So we need to give them a head start. Affirmative action is basically a head start. It simply says, we are putting you 3 steps ahead. Just the same way you play with your kid. If you have a kid, you want to run a small race, 100 meters, you put them midway, so that at least the competition then is also fair. Because otherwise, if at all you put your kid on the same line with you, you'll of course definitely be faster. So what you want to do is you want to give them a few steps ahead. That is what a few of affirmative action does. I'll come back to the. So if you see, for example, the South African after independence, that so now blacks who are able now, if at all they'll be looking for a certain category of qualification, but you are black and you applied, they're giving you affirmative action that yes, let's allow blacks, but for example X. The same thing happened when we were doing the first initial education standards for Kenya. You remember when, for example, C+ was a cutoff point for university education. Now, C+, for example, would be banded from 79 to I think 75 points. But you remember, girls now would be able to go into university with C+ of 75, whereas men would then be given a chance to do C+ of 79. Now, the reason I told you the question you're asking is a very delicate question is because affirmative action, which is the result of something called negative differentiation, to achieve something called positive differentiation, always ends up giving negative differentiation on the other side. Break it down. That you can talk too much about women rights, about girl rights. In fact, the girl one is even easier. You remember most people are saying girl child, until the boy child now is neglected. Now that's the problem of affirmative action. That if you have affirmative action that is not time bound, that is not time intended, then you end up with what is called negative differentiation on the other side, which is what affirmative action was being done for. So like, for example, right now with all this clamor for girl child, everything else, you've now ended up with the boy child down being disadvantaged because you've overdone affirmative action. So back to the women rep position. It is not that the women rep are only supposed to fill the space. No. It is because, you find, for example, my colleague Justina, and I saw her on the call, Justina might be from, let's say, Nairobi County, but ends up being married in Turkana. Or, someone is from Homa Bay and ends up being married in Kwale. Now, you see the way politics in Kenya is done. Politics in Kenya is done in terms of clan, in terms of tribe, in terms of all the small things. For me, who is born in Homa Bay, I start with an advantage over the woman, because the people who are going to support me from the YMP are going to be people I grew up with. We went to the village dance together. We herded cows together. We chased young girls together. It's not the same for a woman who's coming in from Kambani or from Kisii and running in Homa Bay. That is the reason why now you want to give them a head start. You want to make sure that they have affirmative action in terms of representation, because you know that the voices of women on the decision table, if women are for 52% of the country, then it does not make sense that the people making the decisions or deciding for women are more at the men and the women are not on the table. So that is the reason why affirmative action simply makes society become equal. And that is what is the role of the women opposition. It's supposed to help us get more leaders on the table in a way that makes us equal. But I see so many hands up, so maybe it's for you to deal with, Elian.
Thanks, Neto. It's been good. It's almost felt like a podcast between you and Eli, but it's been very good listening, because there's a lot that we're learning. I would like to give an opportunity to Samuel's hand was up. Anthony, you've already spoken, so I'll allow, if you don't mind.
You don't want to do affirmative action, Obes, really, because
relax.
Millicent is with us.
Eli, why are you trying to suggest that I'm not a gentleman? I don't know why you're implying that. So I'm going to allow, with your permission, Millicent, that Samuel speaks, then you're next, and then I have Nyerude, and then Anthony, if that's okay. So Samuel, you had something to say. I allow you time to give you 3 minutes at least to do that, then go to Millicent, and then Nyerude.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. What I would like to say is, when you lower a standard of something just to accumulate another group of individuals or any other set of identity, you're not helping them. It's more or less of tokenism. You can't be, when you talk about affirmative action and this diversity, equity, and this type of inclusion, that's what I'm looking at, because we are conflicting equity with equality. We want everyone wants to be given the same, no one can have the same start. You can't have the same starting point as everyone else. But if you're given the same opportunity, then you can curtail your own way, But you can't say you want the result to be the same. Maybe it'll come a time we will be looking at companies and saying, this company right here, how come it doesn't have women? How come it doesn't have these other tribes as well? Because it's the inclusivity we are talking about. We want people to feel good just to be part of a process, but not really helping them with the process itself. I look at this in a different angle, and I think what was proposed in the earlier constitution was best that at a given point of time, we'll have women in these positions and not need to create a position just for women. So no man can be in that position as well. Okay? You can't be, it can work both ways. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, okay, we want to give women opportunities, and at the same time, it's just going to be this part is only for women. So each and every part of our organization has to be grouped. But we know women that are look at Margaret Thatcher. You don't have to create a position out there for just specific women, because women can also rise in the same ladder that every man has. We create the same opportunity. Not expecting to have the same results that, because I'm a CEO, how come in my class there's no women studying in engineering? Maybe they're there, maybe they're not. No. It's everyone on a different aspect in life. Our constitution is based with each and every tribe that is there. Some tribes have a different advantage than other tribes, based on their geography, based on their culture, based on everything else. So to say we have to elevate one group and not the other, we are discriminating directly. Everyone has to have the same opportunity that even you yourself can be in that position, regardless of what gender. Because now this is based on sex. Next will be based on gender. Next will be based on the way wazazi walifanya, based on tribes. So we create these groups and then tunajaribu kuweka pamoja. Already tuko kimoja. Then why create a group within a group?
So, Samuel, with that point said, I would like to ask, and maybe what's your thought on, we do agree that Kenya is the most unequal society by virtue of either resource, maybe representation, and maybe women have to face a bigger hurdle, to rise to positions of authority by the fact that probably some of them don't have an equitable chance probably at education, because there are situations where culturally we say maybe the boy goes to school and still it still happens. The boy is considered more to school and then, they can help the society. But we also realize that in what Neto has said, the element of trying to do affirmative action actually ends up yielding the opposite. What do you make of the equalization fund? Because in situations where resources have not been properly done, what would be your take? Because I can tell already that you have an issue with that position of specialized woman rep. What is your take on equalization fund? Because it's trying to, in my opinion, it's trying to help to bring others to the space where closer to what is basic, and then we all try and run at the same level. What do you think, and what do you
I make of two things. The first thing is what went on before we started grouping this. Because to my knowledge, we've always had women. They might not be in the leadership position back then. They might not ought to be in that position at the time. They might not even have an opportunity at the time. But you can't say today that women of today have a hard time getting in these positions that they were back then. So my position, my thinking is, if this fund, if we're trying to equalize a society, we cannot equalize a society based on this affirmative action. To me, it's more. Does anyone know about the affirmative action with the Ketanji Brown Jackson, this Supreme Justice that was chosen by Biden to fill the seat, but he had to unseat someone else because it's you up. This is, to me, it's feelings. It's feelings, man. Okay, we need this position. This is more feeling. I just can't see anything else than that. Women are, we are stronger women. Women are like India, they do any aspect of it. But lower standard ndio waingie, hapana. I'm sure watafika hapo na vitu zinaenda hapo. I just don't see it kwamba tuna create each and every way, an equitable way from a society that, because how many groups will there come after we and Sasa? If this is based on gender, next itakuwa based on what? Because itakuwa nothing. Because we need hatukuhitaji these positions. Women wangekuwa governors, wangekuwa MPs, wangekuwa even president some point. We don't have to create a position kwamba now because we have a male president, guess what? Maybe we should have a female president. We should create a way where a female president can rise, that position is only led by females peke yake. Okay, next itakuwa, okay, maybe based on gender. I just don't like the grouping. I just want to, if something went wrong before we started this, then that can be fixed like what we position. But saying we have to put a different channel to find it inclusive, bro, we are opening a door where there will be more and more and more grouping. Not just based on gender peke yake. It's not even about women peke yake. Itafika class kusema, wait a minute, mwanamke mwenye anaishi Vera, akona the same opportunity na mwanamke mwenye anaishi anywhere else country. Even though umempatia the same opportunity pale hivyo. You see, it's sophisticated in a way that this is tokenism. It's tokenism and it's not worth it, was it? We have to re-overthink about that position.
Thank you so much, and Samuel. Very, very good view and a good take. And I think probably we need to reevaluate what we believe and stand for. And as you learn there, Millicent, I saw that Hillary does not feel like I'm being considered. You're the only woman on the mic, or lady on the mic. My apologies, that's not the right way to say it. So I give you an opportunity to make your point, and then after that, I'll allow Ocha to speak. Ocha, please allow the lady to speak, and then you come next. We're all women, aren't we? Listen, please, if you can hear us, please make your point. Can anyone hear Millicent?
No.
There's a possibility Millicent might be using an external mic, and she is not able to have contact with her mic. So maybe Millicent, if you can use handset free, that will fix your problem, or go and make sure you've activated access to mic with your app. Otherwise, you might not be able to speak to us. Obes, I guess we'll go to your Oche.
Yeah, Oche, you see? Then Millicent, while you try to fix that, Oche, you have a question you wanted to ask, or you have a comment?
Thank you so much, Eli and Obed and Mizani, for making this possible. I have some thoughts and also a question to my former member of parliament. Let me start by a question, but let me start by an appreciation. There's a sense with which I agree with Neto that the thinking behind the women rep position was an affirmative one, for that matter. And Millicent is trying to speak, and there is examples of a few women reps. Just to mention about three. Neto had mentioned the National ODM Party chair, who now is a governor, having served 10 years as a woman rep. Kipipiri MP who served as a woman. And then there's also the Likoni MP. So, but the question that I have, if the intention was to have it as an affirmative action, my reading of Article 97(1) of the Constitution just mentions women rep as part of the composition of the National Assembly. It doesn't use the words to the effect that it is an affirmative action. Wouldn't it have been wiser to have it as a sunset clause, such that once that has been attained, then it lapses, just like it has been done in Article 204 of the Equalization Fund, which has been given a sunset of 20 years, and unless Parliament put in place legislation to either suspend or extend that particular period. So, where is Agostino getting the confidence of saying that woman rep position was an affirmative action? Because if that is the line that he's pushing, then it offends the spirit of Article 27, which talks about grounds for discrimination. Because when you elevate A against B, if that is discrimination or providing grounds for discrimination, then I beg to be schooled on what discrimination would mean. And lastly, does Agostino think that in the spirit of UGM, does he think that perhaps it's about time that Kenyans sort this problem of less or lack of inclusion by having co-everything? Is the co-party leader for UGM? Is it about we have a co-president? Is it about time we have a co-speaker? Is it about time we have as a way of addressing this once and for all? Because when competition is lessened, even anecdotal evidence suggests that you cut sources of conflict by half whenever you lessen competition or avenues of competition. With that, I yield my mic. Thank you, Obed, and you, Sante.
Mheshimiwa Neto, I hope you've recorded that. We will have an opportunity for you to respond to that. Or you don't like the title Mheshimiwa? I don't know. Millicent, have you fixed your microphone?
Can you hear me?
100%. Thank you for being a good student.
Okay, sorry, it's because I had my earphones on, so I had to switch them off.
Feel free to take the cross.
Thank you for this opportunity. I see my party leader there, Agostino Neto. How are you? I hope you're okay and preparing for 2027. Well, he drives a valid point when it comes to women in power, like UGM party is a party of inclusivity, and it has given us women, like gender parity. Gender parity because the space was starting to sound like a Passport Bro podcast. And the Passport Bro podcast, where they feel women don't have a space in the world. But UGM creates equal opportunities for women, not in terms of splitting bills in the household or women being men in the household, but women having equal opportunities and resources. Wanting to women rep back in 13, I gave up on that because I realized it was like a flower girl position that was created to shut women up. Because at the end of the day, when you tell me about a women rep, I think of a motherly figure or a feminine type of energy that's supposed to represent both male and female. So the females have been empowered to the point that the males don't know how to deal with this empowered female. Hence why you have the Gen Z on the streets rioting, and because they don't have jobs, they don't have anything to do, they cannot be able to get women because the women are dating their fathers and their uncles and their grandfathers. And aside from that, we talk about equal competition. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be given a position I can get easily by competing with other women. If you put me on a race with other men, the more the merrier, because that means I have to challenge my beliefs, break my social contracts, so that I can be able to achieve what I can based on merit. So somebody in Ruto said that, and I respect him for that. So as we are forging off, maybe we could have a co. We could have gender parity, but that's in terms of opportunities and resources, not in the household. Please don't misquote me. In the house, we want to be taken care of, but in terms in the job place and opportunities and resources, yeah, gender parity. So what's wrong? Why are men so afraid of creating a 50-50? Because that means if you're empowering your woman, you're empowering your sister, your mother, your aunt, your uncle. At the same time, you men are still being empowered. Can we vie for the same positions as men? Yes, we can, but we don't need to be intimidated by men. We don't need men to use our femininity as something that they can use against us simply because we are women. So the women rep position, should it be scrapped or not? I feel if it's a women rep, it should be in terms of representing the younger generation, the young boys and girls, as opposed to being a women representation. Because at the end of the day, you hardly find women that support women.
I don't know, Obed, if you had the last part of Milson there, but Milson, pardon me, did you say women hardly support their own kind? Because I'm thinking that should be
they hardly do because now we have when we study the female and the male, we've broken it down to the DNA. You find women are basically competitive. Like, that's why you find when another woman sees another woman rising up, the first thing they think is, how am I going to put her down or compete with her to be higher than up? There's no cooperation or whatnot. Otherwise, if we cooperated as women, we would literally rule the world.
All right, before I let you go, Milton, looking at this from the perspective of the Constitution aging at 14, would you say that though we have gaps in the Constitution, according to some of you who read it more than we do, is there something that needs to be addressed to ensure that women are competitive in the market, and of course, not only from the leadership aspect, but from the economic part of pay that the nation called Kenya looks into? Millicent.
Yeah, we just want men to play fair. It's simple. Men, if you're competing with me as a woman, play fair.
And that is in the Constitution. There's something you want in the Constitution, and just so that this fairness is fair, because if that is the problem, then we need a review of this document.
Yeah, it needs to be put in the constitution because remember, at the end of the day, men they can band together to take down one woman because the men have that solidarity, which women don't have. So if I'm competing with a man on a certain level of job, I don't expect you to try to take me down. If you're challenging me, let it be one-on-one without you having to come with your bros to take me down.
All right, because, as I conclude, I don't want to make it a podcast like my good friend Obeza accused me, but I'm looking at the 2/3 rule. Does it not provide for this opportunity for women to actually have a fair play in all spectrum of, social, economic, and political aspects of this country? Millicent?
The only party that offers total inclusivity is the UGM party. I've always said this. My party leader is an amazing person. Like, if without him, I would not be able to fight for the 2022 elections. And I was the only woman fighting against 7 men on the ballot. So at the end of the day, men, because we are your sisters, we're your mom, we're your aunts, we're your daughters, at what point do you see that women have to be in position of decision making without having to give us like this flower girl, like, oh yeah, you can have your women rep side there where you can, because at the end of the day, if you look at the women rep, there's nothing much women can really do. But you can invite us to the table.
All right, that is Millicent, and she's arguing that we need to look at this document. It has not given women the best of opportunities to have a fair play. I want to look at the next speaker, and I know we are running out of time, Obes. Thank you for the reminder. MMSQ.
I think we had Anthony Cute, and then we'd have MMS Choir. I think that's what it means. Then I'd have Marabu Stokes, then Professor. The man who talks about a degree. I need to hear what he has to say about the law.
Perfect. Did you say I go?
Yes.
Oh. No. Because I had spoken before, and in the interest of time, I think we can let the guys who have not spoken, because Millicent covered me very well about the women rep thing.
Good. Thank you, Anthony. Millicent, at least you see we have one gentleman in the room. MMS Choir. It looks like he's dropped. Marabu Stokes, what take on this conversation?
Am I coming through?
Yes, brother.
So, greetings. I think Millicent should go back and look at the Bible and understand why women are so envious of themselves, This I think, started in the Garden of Eden. Anyway, back to the matter. I think Kenyans will become complicit and we are allowed permissiveness within our society, whereby the rule of law, as we said before, is not being followed. Because when I heard the first time about affirmative action, I heard that it was positive discrimination because some are accorded equal chances, equal opportunities in leadership and in governance. And so they came up with a policy of positive discrimination, and this was supposed to assist women to attain leadership positions. However, when I look at the population of Kenya, I realize that women are slightly more than men. So if you look at the science of it, then men are supposed to be the ones having this affirmative action towards men. So I think if politically you're not competitive, like when we see on the space, women are not clamoring to come to the mic. So how can we ensure that these people who do not want this position are forced into it? And when we force some people into it just because of conveniency, or because of tokenism, like how we've done with the Attorney General right now, where we put Dorcas. And I don't know why Kenyans don't realize that she is actually the former deputy public prosecutor, the person who allowed people with cases in court to vie in elections. I don't know why people don't take concern about this, because she is in charge of the public prosecution that allowed people like Oparani to become the cabinet secretary right now. So if she did not do her job then, and we are saying that because we want to balance gender, we bring now to the Attorney General. What are we doing? We're just doing what somebody mentioned here, tokenism, because she's our lady, and we say now because we want ladies, let's get somebody and fill this position, regardless of whether they work or not. Lastly, let me say this. We have seen what is happening in Kenya, and I think when we say the rebirth of a nation, we have to realize that the citizenry has the biggest responsibility in determining the destinies of the nation. And why do I say this? When you look at how a bill is brought into parliament, there's something called a private member's bill, which can be brought sponsored by any citizen of the Republic of Kenya. So before we come and say that people are coming with an education bill which is unfriendly, I will ask Mizani, because I know you can draft bills. Have you drafted a bill on education, send it to parliament and have it shut down? I have not. You have not. NATO here has not. So before we say that Ruto is trying to take us to a trajectory that we don't want, let's fill that parliament with a lot of bills so that they don't make bad bills, because the citizenry is filling parliament with good bills. Thank you very much for the time.
Thanks, Marabu. And challenge taken. That I promise you, we take challenges here, and we will do so. With the likes of Nyerude here on board and very, very good brains around, trust me. We shall do. Professor, you have the opportunity to speak. Jadigri.
Hey, thank you, sir.
You need to add
Jadigri. I'm telling you. I have just joined this space and, just got to realize it's a very nice and beautiful conversation. Though, of course, I'm not a lawyer, so then I'll not be speaking from a point of, as an expert point, because some of us are lay when it comes to matters law, but we can only give an opinion. Yeah, so the issue that is, if I got this right, is about the affirmative action and what women are supposed to do, and what is it supposed to be given to them and what not. So from where I sit, I actually differ with my good friend and of course the party leader for UGM, NATO, that these women rep positions should not be scrapped, because it's an affirmative, it's an affirmative for position, and therefore, it needs to be there so that women are also included in leadership and whatnot. But I think for a country like Kenya, I think we are largely, above that, so to speak. From where I work, like South Sudan, and I work for an NGO, and therefore we run, a lot of gender linked projects about negative masculinities and all this. But you realize that for us as Kenya, we have tried this. The constitution is not young. And, we are talking about quite a lot of years when we have had this constitution. And for that time, we have had, this position of women rep. But then we cannot be able to demonstrate that what is it that, forget about Kenya as a country, but even the women of Kenya, what is it that this position has been able to offer? If you look at the 47 of them, plus, of course, we have nominated positions and whatnot. You realize that most of these women that are there, I'm not saying that they are not competent enough, but at the end of the day, in terms of even policy, legislation, and whatnot, we have not seen much in terms of what they are trying to push for the women of this country. And the last time I checked in the Senate, there was a Gloria somebody who went to the Senate with, with some stained hands, and for her that was advocacy, which was completely not in order. That is not how you do advocacy. So if these positions are there, and we have 47 of them, but then you realize that there is no value for it. What we do? What was it that women of Kenya are getting in return in terms of having this position? So are these really positions that are empowering women, or are they just empowering individual women, so that it is meant for individuals? So we say so and so is women for this county, and so is. So what then after that? What is it that happens after that? So in terms of affirmative action, I don't think it is just the youth, or of course people with disability, women, the youth and whatnot. But we do not have special seats which are created for these groups. But of course we have tried it with women. It's not working. And even for the youth, for example, if you look at the few youth that have been privileged to, to get into positions of power, some of them in parliament and whatnot. And then you want to say that now can we have, positions that are created because of affirmative action for the youth. But then even the few youth that have also managed to, to reach there, they have also not done much in terms of how to just demonstrate to the others that, if you have more youth, then this and this is going to change. If you have more women, this will change. It's not changing much. And people who are making, inroads in terms of policy and legislations are not even these youths and the women. So for me, I think people should just be left to compete. What we need to advocate for is having a level playground, so that the things that Millicent were raising in terms of, of course, don't hold me back, allow us to do this, those are the things that we should be talking about. So that when the playground is leveled and everyone is able to compete on their own without really being, some seats are being created, then it is easier for women to thrive. But if we say that let us have seats that are special for women, for youth with disability, I don't think that is really going to help us as a country. So the focus should be on having level playing ground and not having this ballooned, legislature where we have so many people and you cannot be able to document or even they cannot be able to account for whatever it is that you're doing in those houses. So for me, that is a big no. And moving forward, as we go into, of course, next elections, and as we advocate for many things, it's good that the question is changing. We are not talking about, it is not now very radical. But then our position now, as people move forward, is a bit more objective. And therefore, this is the time now to talk about what is it that we can be able to do. Of course, small doable actions, small things that can be achieved. If it is constitutional change, what does it take to do these things? Is it through a referendum or even through the houses? So then we can be able to make those changes. But having women rep as a position or our seats in the legislative assembly, I think this is gross and was a mistake. I try to compare with a few countries, of course, in the region and within the continent. You realize that, it's actually Kenya that is trying to pilot this, which people thought that probably would work. But from where we sit and all of us can, what is it that we can be able to say that the few years that we have tried this and we have piloted, can you be able to account and say that, we piloted this when the position was, came into force. Now we are here. This is what we have been able to achieve. Even Millicent herself cannot be able to tell us that. So we really want to work with the data and just so that we can make those informed decisions. But just saying amorphously that, these are women.
I'm sorry, I hate to do this, but I give you a few seconds to land because you made a very...
No, I think my point is home, sure.
Thank you very much. They say a good man knows when to exit this. That's a good dancer. You sound like one. Msema Kweli, before I go back to Neto, you had some of the issues that have been raised, and I give you an opportunity to be able to respond. And we don't have much time, so I give Msema Kweli an opportunity to put his point across, then go to Neto to have a rebuttal, or at least, to be able to say something. Millicent, I saw your hand up. I'll give you an opportunity. Unless, is it a burning issue that I need to give you a minute, or we can wait for Mr. Makoli to speak?
I'm saying, because I'm hearing the voices of the men, and, some people say I should have been more of a men's leader as opposed to women leader. But I think because of gender parity, that's the reason why I went into politics. Every role that's created for a woman, a man should have the same opportunity. So if there's women representative, they should have the men representative. Then the issues can be moved into about children, both male and children empowerment, then people with disabilities, then widows and widows. That's just my opinion. But I think the role can shift being specific because the women were already empowered. And the reason why we're already empowered is because you can see the passport bros cannot even deal with this modern woman. That's why they're on the passport bros complaining and crying about modern women. So how are we also going to empower the men? Then we can have this type of a balance. So if the women rep office remains, let them also have a man rep. Then they are forced to work together, then because we're moving into Generation Alpha, to find solutions for our future children to coexist in this planet and this earth.
Thank you, Millicent. That's an interesting take. And somebody sarcastically asked, and I don't know whether it was sarcastic, but I did ask, why do men vote for women reps? Sema Kweli, you have your chance to make your contribution.
All right, my contribution is on security. Can you hear me? Give me a hand if you can.
Hear you very well.
Okay, so mine is on security. Whether it's at the next referendum, I think it's clear to all of us that the security forces, that's police and all that, have a big impact to protection of life and also rule of law. And as it is right now, all security, for the most part, is centralized. So my case is we need to make a strong case for at least partial devolution of the security apparatus, meaning that, say, we need to look at this national control of the security services from national police from Nairobi, so that we can have a balance. For us to have durable law and order and security, we need a balance between the national government and the local governments in terms of matters policing. And as much as we can talk about community policing, it's very hard to have community policing if we do not have people in the community or in the county being the people who do primary policing in the county. And that will act as a counterbalance. If you look at many countries around the world that have good systems, you'll always find majority of the policing at the county level is done by county police under the county government, not under the national government. That way you will have a balance so that when you have a rogue government in the national level, they're not just able to unleash violence on everybody because there's these other police that's not under their control at the local level. And Kenya, you may say, oh yeah, Kenya isn't of size, but yeah, we are of size. You know, if you think about the average county, we have at least 1 million citizens living in every county. That's a sizable number. This is not like 1980 when there was just a few residents, and we're growing. So strong case to either at a minimum partial to significant devolution of security to county governments. If there's counties that are not able to do this, then they can have arrangements with the national government how they'll assist them. But then the counties that are capable of having significant policing under the county government and governors, that's the way it should be, so that we can have this balance, so we don't have a national government that's unleashing terror and violence for the entire country, and there is no other way to counteract it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Makweli. That's a very interesting take, and I think one of those things to consider, Mizani, I think it's something to take on board and look at how that can be canvassed. So that's it. Neto, I give you an opportunity to rebut, and then after you're done, I'll have Brian Gola and Mohammed, and then we consider closing the space. Neto?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. So I think with regard to Mr. Makweli's comment on security and the centralization or decentralization, I think that's a subject that we really want to discuss another day, because I start on it, it will take off the time. But I think I hear him, but I just need to say in passing that, you know, the only reason why we find a form of government is to help people have life, liberty, and pursue happiness. And within the context of Kenya, you must want to see, given the nature of some of the governors have behaved, even locally, apart from the theft, you can imagine all that power in the hands of a particular governor, what they would be doing in terms of secretariation. But that is not what I want to discuss right now. That's for the future. Let's go back to this conversation that looks like the better part. I don't know who brought affirmative action in this conversation, but I heard you, Samuel, I heard you, Oche, and I also heard you, Millicent, and Degree, and Marubu's talk. So I want to speak collectively in some of the things that you said. So the first thing I'd like to say which is what we said when we were opening this particular, is that the constitutional document we have is a social contract of the Kenyan people. It is what the Kenyan people agreed and said this is how they want to be led and this is how they want to lead themselves. That's one. The second thing is that the Kenyan people did vote for this particular constitution in the referendum to respond to the social conflicts that Kenya was already experiencing. And what are those social conflicts that Kenya was experiencing? Kenya was, for example, experiencing tribalism. Kenya was experiencing gender inequality. Kenya was experiencing marginalization, discrimination of minorities. So those things, therefore, then found themselves into a constitutional document. And the people of Kenya said, that's how we want to be governed, we've seen, for example, that if Moi was president, it's only the Rift Valley that got development. Kwale did not have development, or parts of Central Kenya did not have development. So how do we attain equitable distribution and equitable wealth? Now, that is different, Samuel, from equality that is spoken to in Article 27. Article 27 does not talk about equity. Article 27 talks about equality. So, in terms of having representation, and so I want to speak like this because Ochi also said a few things, some of which I agree with, but some of which I'll clarify. You see, if you look at the province of Article 27.6, it says, to give full effect to the relation of the rights granted in the article, the state shall take legislative and other measures, including affirmative action programs and policies designed to redress any disadvantages suffered by the individuals or groups because of past discrimination. And that's what I just told you, that Kenya knew that there's certain genders, certain sexes that had already experienced discrimination. And so how are we going to bring them to the table in terms of equality? That necessitated affirmative action. Now, I did concede, speaking, that the challenge of affirmative action is that because it is positive differentiation, sometimes it ends up attaining negative differentiation of the same things that you're trying to deal with. And that is the nature of affirmative action. So that, for example, Anna said it when I was speaking that, because we've given too much attention to girl children, the boy child then therefore gets disadvantage. That is the nature of affirmative action. Now, Oche says something that I agree with. The affirmative action clause, so the women position, for example, is affirmative action because of Article 27.8. No, not more than 2/3 of any elective appointed position shall be of obey the gender. And if you see, that's the same principle that is done in the county assembly level, so that it is supposed to help bridging gaps to help us attain the equality clause under Article 27.8. What is the challenge? I agree with you absolutely that one, but also in terms of term limits for the women reps themselves. So apart from having a sunset clause on the women rep position, it also needs to, for example, ensure that, like my friend, I think Rose Museo of Makweni, I think she's doing her 4th term or 5th term as women rep. I don't think that is what the women rep position in that, one woman rep can be woman rep for life. Therefore, then she's actually not fitting the role of what that thing needs to be done. So I agree with you on 2 things. One, there needs to be a sunset clause, both in terms of when should we exit from this women rep issue, but number 2, in terms of setting the number of times or how many times a woman rep can run. Now, the other thing that I'd like to say is Marabu said, men should have affirmative action or we do things for convenience. No, the Constitution is what we got ourselves into. This is what we said. We've looked at ourselves in the face and said this is how we want to govern ourselves. So it cannot be that now we want to slide it. If we want to have a fair playing field, like the degree comes to say, in elective positions in Kenya now, how can we have a fair playing field? There are 2 ways. One, we are able to create the number of representative positions that we require in a way that they fit the two-third gender role on Article 27.8, or number two, change our process to proportional representation. I'll give you an example. Rwanda and South Africa, for example, if you have a proportional representation system, then it becomes very easy to, for example, attain these quotas without necessarily having the women in their position, because then what you'll be having is you'll be having party lists. Therefore, also making our parties very competitive and also standing on ideology in a way that then makes sense to the electoral process. Because on party lists, for example, if you see EFF or ANC, for example, they have a party list where you have the quotas you want to achieve. You have the men, women, persons with disability, and youth in a way that then responds to the constitutional aspiration. But you cannot have a level playing field in a first past the post system like we have in Kenya. As the disease as well, that look at the last election. Raila Odinga had, I think, maybe 5 million votes. William Ruto had 5.2 million votes. So the difference of 200,000 votes makes Raila, want to engage in this cohabitation sort of government. But you see, if it is a PR system of government, then you should have had, in all fairness, had 5% of government, and maybe William Ruto would have had 50%, and then the others, Wiper and ANC should have then had 5% if we were having a proportional representative system of government. But you remember, first past the post makes sure that the winner takes it all in a way that then does not make sense. Now, we cannot demonstrate a degree from South Sudan says we cannot demonstrate what the women have done. Now, you can also, that can only be a fair statement if you can also show us what most of the men have done, especially given that they have money than they have more money in terms of for development and at their disposal. I really think that it's fair to say that the value that elected leaders present is not just a value in terms of development, but also the value in terms of ideas. In terms of, I watched constantly the debate of one of the nominated senators, Chris Lasige. In all fairness, she's nominated, but you see her level of contribution and level of debate is far much better than the elected man rep who would have ordinarily, we would not have, if it was not for affirmative action and nomination slot, we would not have this kind of legislative ability coming to the Senate. So it is not fair to say there's no value for Kenya in terms of women rep or in terms of youth. I think there's some young people who've done very good jobs, and there's some older people who've also done very good jobs. It is not fair to say that you want to have one side for everyone else. So I really think that the various Marabu's talk on the last thing is that some people have drafted bills. And I'm not going to speak for myself, but the Refugee Act that is currently being done used in Kenya, the Health Records and Information Act, the Human Rights Policy that is being done in this country that was done by me. So it's not that all of us sitting and talking in space are just talking like that. But so it is fair to say, let's give young people a chance, let's give women a chance, let's give persons with disability a chance, because that is the country that we really hope towards, that where it's a rainbow of all characters, a rainbow of all tribes, and a rainbow of everyone else. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agostino. I give Brian